This is CBN News Watch.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. Lots to get to this half hour. Let's begin in the Middle East as Israel enters one of the most important days of the year. The focus remains on the southern city of Rafah. As Chris Mitchell reports now from Jerusalem, Israel goes from mourning its fallen in war to celebrating its independence after 76 years and 2,000 years in exile.
Israel paused for 2 minutes this morning as the nation commemorated its Memorial Day. At the opening ceremony, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised to continue the Gaza operation and declared what wounded soldiers from the war have told him.
All of them without exception, even the amputees. They told me the spirit of the people lifts them up. Keep going until victory, and that's how we will do it. The spirit of the people, with God's help, will continue to lift us up in the fateful challenges that are still ahead of us and that we had in our 76 years of independence.
More than 300,000 Gazans have already fled Rafah. Some have escaped to safe zones established by the Israel Defense Forces to get them out of harm's way. Israeli forces have pushed deeper into the city, the last major stronghold of Hamas. So far, they're using targeted strikes without launching a major invasion. This may address President Biden's threat to halt American weapons shipments to Israel if it does undertake a major assault. Israel also pounded northern Gaza, where some Hamas terrorists have fled and regrouped after the IDF cleared that area months ago. At the same time, Hamas has continued to fire rockets at southern Israel, including one that struck a playground in the southern Israeli city of Beersheba. According to the Washington Post, the Biden administration offered to share intelligence about where Hamas leaders are located if Israel holds back on a major attack on Rafah. Some Israeli analysts question why the U.S. wouldn't share such vital intelligence anyway with its strongest ally in the Middle East. And Secretary of State Antony Blinken delivered some of the strongest U.S. criticism yet of Israel's conduct of the war.
Going into to Rafah, even to deal with these remaining battalions, especially in the absence of a plan for civilians, risks doing terrible harm to civilians and not solving the problem, a problem that both of us want to solve, which is making sure Hamas cannot again govern Gaza.
But Republicans and many Democrats are pushing back hard against the president's actions on withholding weapons for Israel. Representative Michael McCall from Texas said an invasion of Rafah is necessary to complete Israel's mission.
For us to step in and say, no, you can't go into Rafah and finish the job, I think it's tantamount to an arms embargo. It's also very similar for us to say in World War II, hey, like my dad's generation, you can invade all the way up to Berlin, but you can't go into Berlin to finish the job.
Despite the White House's actions, Israel is promising on the eve of its 76th Independence Day to push ahead until Hamas is finally defeated.
Chris Mitchell joins us now with more. So, Chris, Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Israel is going into Rafah without a plan for civilians and the causes there, keeping them from harm. But aren't there plans already in place for civilians?
Ephraim, there are humanitarian plans. They have a humanitarian zone all mapped out. There are detailed maps that have been given out to Gazans. There have been leaflets that have been dropped. Text messages, phone calls, all in Arabic. On the other hand, Hamas wants to prevent these people from leaving Rafah or any area that the IDF is going in to attack Hamas. They've asked this particular place in Gazans going from Rafah a few miles away, and they have coordinated there field hospitals, tents, food, water, and medicine, all in an attempt to protect civilian lives, and yet, on the other hand, to try to eliminate Hamas as a threat to Israel's southern border. And as you can see, they're actually still firing missiles in southern Israel. They're in Beersheba.
What can you tell us about getting essential supplies and aid to civilians in Rafah at this hour?
Well, according to COGAT, and that is the Coordination of Government Activities in the Territories, they're continuing to send humanitarian aid into both northern and southern Gaza. Recently, about 100 food trucks went in. They have 2 crossings in the north, 2 crossings in the south. Per day, they have about 350 trucks. The port of Ashdod is open. They have a floating pier that's being constructed along with the United States. They just reopened the Kerem Shalom crossing. A few days ago, Hamas fired on that, killing 4 IDF soldiers. Then Israel reopened it. Hamas fired again at the crossing. So they're doing what they can to get the humanitarian aid in. According to COGAT, there's no risk of famine in a variety of goods in northern Gaza. In fact, there are bakeries there in northern Gaza cooking maybe about 5 million pita loaves per day. In stark contrast, recently, Ephraim, Cindy McCain, she's the wife of the former senator. She's now head of one of the UN agencies. She says there's a full-blown famine in northern Gaza. COGAT obviously disputes that.
Chris, the Washington Post is reporting the Biden administration is offering to share intelligence on where Hamas leaders are located if Israel holds back on a major attack in Rafah. Is this enough for Israel to stop a full-scale invasion?
Ephraim, I really don't believe so. I think Israel's committed to proceed into Rafah. They don't believe they can really end the war or claim victory over Hamas unless they do go into Rafah. As we said in our report, it seems to be incremental. And as you said, you know, the Washington Post says they have intelligence about some of the leaders of Hamas. Israel has their own intelligence. And as we said in our report, some analysts make the point, well, if the United States has intelligence on some of these Hamas leaders, shouldn't they give that to Israel anyway as an ally and not use it as leverage to stop Israel from attacking Rafah? But this U.S.-Israel relationship has been strained for many months now, and by preventing arms going into Rafah, it's really strained it that much more.
Can you tell us more about the Memorial Day ceremony there in Israel?
Well, it's very somber, Ephraim. There was a 1-minute siren last night. Most businesses closed early. 2-minute siren this morning. We were out on the streets this morning as well. It's a very somber, moment in Israel's day and Israel's history. Just a few days ago, there was a 2-minute siren remembering the 6 million who died in the Holocaust. But on Memorial Day, there will be commemorations throughout the country, in small community centers and larger state-sponsored events, all remembering the more than 25,000 Israelis, men and women who have died in battle. And tonight, as a whole change, Ephraim, begins Independence Day, that Israel's July 4th, and it's going to go from a somber day to somewhat of a celebration, but certainly muted this year because of the war in Gaza.
All right. Thanks a lot, Chris Mitchell. As always, much appreciated. We continue to pray for you and the team on the ground there in Israel. God's creation was on full display this weekend as the Aurora Borealis, also known as the Northern Lights, was seen farther south than it's been seen in generations. Dale Hurd is on this story.
It was a celestial show in the heavens that many Americans thought they would never witness firsthand. Millions across the country were treated to a green and sometimes purple glow in the night sky this past weekend. As far south as Texas in the U.S., as well as Chile, northern China, England, and northern Europe.
It is a very exciting start to the day at Lalande because something wonderful happened in the night. We saw the northern lights over Lalande.
It was all thanks to a severe geomagnetic storm on the surface of the sun that produced a rare and powerful sequence of solar flares over several days.
A rapid fire of all these CMEs, coronal mass ejections, aimed at Earth and arriving at Earth is what drove the geomagnetic field to such an agitated state.
Basically what happens is part of the sun actually lifts off the surface, right? So this plasma, the charged particles, the magnetic field that makes up the sun, part of it actually lifts off the sun and streams away into space.
The light show also caused some minor problems with the power grid, high-frequency communications, and some GPS systems, causing the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to issue a rare geomagnetic storm warning. Elon Musk's Starlink satellite internet service said on its website Saturday that service had been degraded. An extreme geomagnetic storm in 2003 took out power in Sweden and damaged power transformers in South Africa.
They're not built to use this current, so it becomes a problem.
But this event was about enjoying the wonder of God's handiwork, the Aurora Borealis, the northern lights, seen by many for the first time.
Is that the northern lights?
No, that's a light pole. Oh, it's kind of fun over there, though.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Coming up, protecting children or violation of privacy. A new Florida law bans children under 14 from social media. Some are calling these safeguards a threat to free speech. We're going to bring you the debate over these online restrictions when we come back. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Protecting children online is one of our greatest challenges. A new Florida law aims to limit the danger of addiction and shield them from harmful content. While some view the law as a blueprint for positive change, critics are calling it government overreach. Bertie Carter is on this story.
A first-of-its-kind law right here in Florida prohibiting minors from using social media. Now, proponents of the law say that it's a big win for protecting children, while others believe it's a threat to free speech and online privacy.
Truly, these platforms are using addiction, not just for kids, but for adults, to keep us online, keep those eyeballs online as long as possible. So we do see other states looking at what we've done. We see the national conversation.
Florida House Speaker Paul Renner calls social media the world's largest unregulated experiment affecting children. According to a Gallup poll, teenagers from 13 to 19 spend an average of 4 to 6 hours each day on social media. It also identified YouTube and TikTok as their favorite destinations.
We do not want to have them on these platforms at a young age where many of your sexual predators now principally prey on children through social media.
Renner played a crucial role in updating a law that now prevents Florida kids under 14 from using social media sites, especially those that customize what you see, allow content sharing, and include addictive features. However, teenagers aged 14 and 15 can still access these platforms with parental consent.
You can have a kid in the house, safe seemingly, and then you have predators that can get right in there into your own home. You could be doing everything right, but they know how to get and manipulate these different platforms.
When the law takes effect January 1st, online safeguards will be strengthened using age verification tools and tracking software to identify usage by minors. Companies that fail to comply could face fines of up to $50,000 per incident.
The Attorney General has the ability to run a sting and put people online and see if they're allowed in, or if there's any kind of due diligence to ensure their age. But based on the penalties that are there, including possible punitive damages, there's a big hammer in the case that they decide not to follow the laws they have not been following today.
Florida parents have a stronger influence thanks to Patty Sullivan's group pushing the state's Parental Bill of Rights in 2022, which ultimately paved the way for the online protection law known as HB 3.
We got the law passed. Now it's up to the parents. It's up to the parents to engage and stand for their own children.
Even before research proved social media's addictive nature, Patty set an example at home by limiting her daughter Abigail's online activity.
I actually was able to speak in some of those committees with the Parents' Bill of Rights and those bills and champion that issue and make sure that the legislators heard from somebody, younger, but who knew that parental rights were important because, one day I might be a parent myself, and I want those rights to be protected.
HB 3 is designed to shield children from social media and regulate access to adult content. Under this law, anyone over 18 will need to show identification to access pornography. While it provides parents with some level of control, several organizations argue it curtails First Amendment rights and compromises online privacy. Major groups against the measure include the ACLU, which calls HB 3 a blatant government censorship bill. PEN America tells CBN News the age verification requirements are confusing and infringe on all Floridians' rights to privacy, urging the governor to steer clear of further censoring speech.
The group Net Choice, which represents all the common platforms you would be familiar with that do fall under this bill, will likely sue soon and bring us into federal court suggesting that somehow we violated the First Amendment. Again, as a lawyer, I don't think we've touched the First Amendment because we're focused on addictive technology, and technology is not protected in the First Amendment.
While Speaker Renner expects a lawsuit, he maintains the law is constitutionally sound and simply requires everyone to do their part to protect children online.
Some families may struggle with helping their children have those guidelines because they themselves, as a parent, may be addicted to these platforms because of these algorithms as well.
As January 1st approaches, the state will have to navigate a fine line of keeping young Floridians safe online without government overreach. A positive result could serve as a blueprint for other states seeking to strike that delicate balance between protecting children and preserving freedom. Reporting in Palm Coast, Florida, Brody Carter, CBN News.
Still ahead, we are heading to Studio 5 for an interview with rock and roll preacher Chuck Girard. Stay with us. You're watching CBN News Watch. We'll be right back. And welcome back to CBN News Watch. Singer, songwriter, and worship leader Chuck Girard is the author of the book Rock and Roll Preacher. It's a memoir chronicling his life and his ministry. He's also a pioneer in contemporary Christian music and the founder of the band Love Song. Well, he joins us now with more on his book and his life. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get to the book, there is word of a new documentary on the first Christian rock band you co-founded called Love Song. What can you tell us and what can we expect from the documentary?
Well, actually, it's really going to be excellent. It's basically our band's story, but it covers some of the subject matter that was covered in the movie Jesus Revolution, and there's a lot of renewed interest because of that movie. It's called A Band Called Love Song, and it's coming out. We don't have an actual release date yet. We're in legal right now, trying to clear everything, and as soon as we get that done, she'll be good to go. So we'll keep an announcement coming on that when that's available.
And looking forward to that. Let's get now to the memoir. You're rather transparent about your life and your ministry without giving too much away. What are some things you had to endure to get where you are today?
Well, you know, I had the same ups and downs everybody does as a Christian. We were very blessed that our band was raised up very quickly, but that also had a negative side because we were baby Christians in a great position of influence and authority. We were only together for about 3 years, and then we disbanded. And then when I went solo, I had some problems crop up in my own life that we deal with in the book. I wrestled with alcohol addiction as a Christian, but we didn't want to make the book about alcohol addiction. So I did cover it in a subchapter toward the end, but we didn't want to weave it in through the narrative because basically the whole story is a very positive, victorious story. Mm-hmm. And we all have our problems in the context of our Christian walk, but I did not also want to shy away from it. So I think there's some very useful things, information in there for people that might be going through their own struggle with alcohol addiction. But it covers just a lot of stuff that people are interested in right now, and I think they'd enjoy the book a lot.
Take us back to the moment that you came to know Christ for yourself.
It was a group of myself and about 6 or 7 like-minded other guys who were basically also musicians. I didn't want what I landed on to be Christian. I had hoped maybe I'd find God up on a mountainside with a guru somewhere, you know. Mm-hmm. But I thought, you know, if I'm going to be open-minded, I have to check this out. So I went up to Calvary one night on my own. Some of the guys had gone up, you know, in different couple of them at a time, whatever. And God met me on the back row there. I sat on the back row so I could make my escape if I needed to, because I wasn't sure but it was Chuck Smith that night. I was looking for Lonnie Frisbee, the hippie preacher, but Chuck was the one preaching, but God didn't care. And he just really moved my heart. And I'll tell you what was interesting. The first thing that I connected with was the music, which I was kind of a musical snob. I like Pink Floyd and those kind of bands. And here I was being deeply moved by these kind of substandard folk songs that were being sung by these hippie kids. And I couldn't figure out why am I so moved by these songs. And, you know, I didn't know anything about the anointing at that time, but God used the music and the preaching to some degree and met me on that back row of Calvary Chapel when there was only one. And I didn't go to the front that night, but I made a commitment to God that this seemed right, and I'd be there for the duration until he told me different.
Now, you have a new studio album coming out called Moonrise Serenade, correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you for mentioning it. It's my first studio album in 30 years. I've had a couple of worship CDs out in the meantime, Voice of the Wind and Evening Shadows, but this is the first time I've got a bunch of musicians together in the studio again in 30 years, and very excited about it. It's a kind of a combination of old songs, new songs. You know, it could be, you know, look, I'm 80 years old. Who knows if I'm going to make another album? So, you know, it's just sort of getting it all on. It's going to be very packed. It's going to have 17 songs on it, and pretty excited about it coming out.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. We appreciate you joining us. And for more on Chuck's book, Rock and Roll Preacher, simply go to the website, chuckgirard.com. Stay with us. You're watching CBN News Watch. We'll be right back.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Time now for your Monday Motivation. I leave you with this thought as we begin another week together. You are not forgotten. God sees you and he knows your name. Think on that for a moment. The Lord of the earth, who is all-powerful and all-knowing, he sees you and he knows your name. With that word, make this a marvelous Monday, and let's commit together to make this a wonderful week. That will do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online. That's cbnnews.com. Take a moment, let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We always love hearing from you. We look forward to seeing you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye, God bless, and thank you so much for watching.